If you watch any of my other videos, you know I love index funds.
You have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love, and love, and love you.
Index funds.
I never wish to be parted from you from this day on.
I wholeheartedly believe that it is one of the most effective ways for regular individuals like you and I to grow our net worth over a long period of time. So let me share with you 10 reasons why I personally invest a good chunk of my money in index funds and why I believe it is one of the best tools to effectively grow our net worth. And hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tay from Financial Tortoise, where we learn to grow our wealth slow and steady. The number one reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool, and this is my personal favorite, it is simple. The financial industry loves to portray investing as this complex, elaborate scientific endeavor. They make it seem like you need to understand the intricacies of the market, the economy, and the geopolitical implications of world events in order to successfully invest. And Hollywood doesn't help in this regard. If you watch some of the big money movies like The Big Short, Margin Call, or Wall Street, they make it seem like you need a doctoral degree in macroeconomics in order to invest. However, the truth is that, while yes, for a very select professionals who are trying to get an edge over the market and exploit certain market opportunities, this could be true, for the rest of us, it is not. In actuality, the overly complicated financial chatter is completely useless, if not harmful to our investing endeavor. Investing can be very simple, and index fund investing proves that. By investing in a simple index fund that tracks either the performance of the S&P 500 or the total market, we can harness the power of the market growth without unnecessary complexity. The number two reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool. In the line of simplicity, it is super easy to invest because it's widely available. These days, you can find index fund options pretty much everywhere. In company 401ks, Roth IRAs, health savings accounts, 529s, taxable accounts, and even donor-advised funds. And they're made available by pretty much all the major investment firms: Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, BlackRock, State Street. However, it wasn't always this way though. Vanguard launched the first index fund in 1976 that tracked the S&P 500. And at the time of the launch, it was actually considered a failure. Jack Bogle, the founder of the first index fund, started with an initial public offering of $150 million. However, only $11 million was raised, and the fund remained small for many years. Wall Street even made fun of Jack Bogle, calling the fund Bogle's Folly. Fast forward 50 years, and now the Vanguard 500 Index Fund, aka VFIAX, has over $800 billion assets under management, dwarfing most actively managed funds in the market. And it has spurred pretty much the whole investing industry to play catch up. Who's laughing now, right? If your company's 401k doesn't offer a good, low-cost, broad market index fund as an option, make sure to check with your HR manager. With so many good ones available by pretty much all major investing firms, it's a criminal if your company doesn't offer an index fund option within your 401k. And if you want more flexibility, there are now exchange-traded funds, aka ETFs. ETFs can be bought and sold in the exchange the same way that a regular stock can, and have a few other unique traits that makes it favorable for some investors. I have a video where I delve deep into comparing the difference between an index fund and ETF, so I'll have a link to that video in the description below. The number three reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool is cheap. When it comes to investing, costs matter quite a bit, and they matter even more when we compound this effects over a long period of time. Thus, I love index funds because they're so cheap. Actively managed funds are known to charge somewhere between 0.5 to 2% expense ratios. What this translates to is that if you have $10,000 invested in an actively managed fund, you're paying between $50 and $200 annually for a fund manager to manage that money for you. Yes, $50 or $200 may not sound like much, but let's compare that to the cost of investing in an index fund. Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, aka VTSAX, has an expense ratio of 0.04%, which is effectively $4 for every $10,000 invested. Schwab Total Stock Market Index Fund, aka SWTSX, has an expense ratio of 0.03%, effectively $3 for every $10,000 invested. Fidelity Total Market Index Fund, aka FSKAX, has an expense ratio of 0.015%, effectively $1.50 for every $10,000 invested. And we're not even considering the hidden costs that many actively managed funds bake into their overall expense. Commissions and bid-to-ask spread that comes from higher turnover most actively managed funds have. And not to mention your highest cost, the value of your time selecting and managing a portfolio manager. Alright, then you might be asking, there must be a good reason why actively managed funds are more expensive, right? They must be making more money than index funds. A quick interruption. For a limited time, I'll be opening up my calendar for one-to-one money coaching sessions, a time where you can connect with me directly, as well as ask me any money questions you might have. Especially helpful if these talks about investing and returns confuse you. The money journey is hard in itself, and sometimes you just need to get some unbiased feedback without judgment. If you think this could be a value add to your financial journey, please go to my website to learn more. I'll also have a link in the description below. Alright, with that said, let's get back to the video. Which leads to the number 7 reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool. Actively managed funds actually do not perform better than index funds. If you can believe it, research shows that index funds outperform most actively managed funds. Yes, at times, it makes sense to pay more for things. With certain products, you get a higher quality, better service, and just an overall better product when you pay more for something. Most recently, I upgraded my laptop from a 5-year-old 2018 MacBook Pro to the latest 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 Max chip. Now, despite the fact that I spend the majority of my time on computers, I actually don't know too much about them. I know how to use them, but I really can't tell you what a 30-core GPU does or 32 gigabytes of unified memory means. You might as well speak to me in French. But after having watched several YouTube videos from people who are much smarter than I about technology, I decided to pull the trigger and upgrade my computer with a higher price tag. And let me tell you, I can't explain what a 12-core CPU means, but I can tell you I really enjoy how fast my computer is, especially when I edit videos. Higher price tag really translated to better performance for me. So it's easy to assume the same when it comes to investing. If someone is charging me 10 times more to invest in a certain fund, it must be 10 times better, right? Or even half that would make sense. But what if I was to tell you that is not the case? When we pay more to participate in actively managed funds, it's similar to me paying 3 times more for a better laptop, but it actually performs 3 times worse. According to Spiva's scorecard, the index versus active scorecard produced by S&P/Dow Jones Indices, over the past 15 years, 93% of actively managed large cap funds underperformed the S&P 500. And other studies have shown that when we stretch out the time period to 30, 40, or 50 years, the percentage of underperforming actively managed funds get closer and closer to 99%. The bottom line is this. Don't believe that high expense of actively managed funds equate to better performance. It actually is the opposite in most cases. The number 5 reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool. It saves me so much time. When you follow the index fund strategy, the time you need to spend to manage your portfolio, if I can take a guess, will likely be no more than a few hours a year. And if that. For me, given I know which specific fund I like to put my money into consistently, I think I spend no more than an hour a year on my portfolio. And most of that time is spent logging into my account and navigating through the different pages since the user interface got updated since the last time I logged in. The bottom line is when you invest in index funds, you don't have to spend any time at all researching the market, different actively managed funds, and especially individual stocks. You don't have to read investing journals, 10Ks, listen to investor calls, and follow individual companies. You don't have to because they won't make any difference in how you invest. And when you realize that all the information you read is completely unactionable, you would likely want to be doing something else with your life. Remember, you're investing so you can live the life that you want. You're not living to spend all that time investing. Number 6 reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool. It's transparent. Unlike so many financial products out there, we can actually understand it. It's so straightforward that even a 4th grader can understand what it's trying to do. An index fund is a type of mutual fund that seeks to track the return of a market index. May that be S&P 500 or the total market, or something weird like the breakfast index. Yes, there's actually an index that tracks everything that goes into your breakfast. Corn, sugar, wheat, pork. Now that wouldn't be an index I recommend you follow, but at least you understand what the fund is trying to do. At the time of this video, there are approximately 7,000 mutual funds in the US. You expand that globally, and now you have close to 140,000 mutual funds. That is a lot of funds. There are only about 4,000 publicly traded companies in the US, which essentially means that there is more packaging of goods into different products than the goods themselves. And with my personal experience of having looked at many mutual funds, I often scratch my head at what the fund is trying to do. Most often they have these fancy names such as enhanced, discovery, or sustainable attached to them. And they have fancy fund managers to go along with them. It states that it has some grandiose strategy to find undervalued stocks through intricate quantitative analysis, but doesn't reveal how it does it. And when we look at the composition, it looks like it's just a different grouping of existing funds or individual securities. And of course, if you ask what this fund is trying to do, they'll have a good rehearsed answer for it. They have to justify the high expense you're paying to participate in that fund. Unlike these complex, hard to understand funds, index funds are as transparent as you can get in the investing world. An S&P 500 index tracks the S&P 500 index. Nothing more, nothing less. No promises to beat the market, no fancy names to go along with it. And I find comfort in that. Number 7 reason why I invest in index funds as my core wealth building tool. It's tax efficient. When we compare index funds to actively managed funds, index funds are generally more tax efficient because the turnover is so low. When you have low turnover, there are fewer capital gains distribution you have to pay taxes on. For total market index funds, the only time they'll have a turnover is when there is an initial public offering or when a company gets delisted from the exchange. This happens when a company declares bankruptcies, merges, or seeks to become private. Most total market index funds have a turnover rate under 4%. which translates to the average stock being held for approximately 25 years. Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, VTSAX, latest turnover rate was 3.4%. Schwab Total Stock Market Index Fund, SWTSX, had a turnover rate of 2.45%. Fidelity Total Market Index Fund, FSKAX, had a turnover rate of 2%. Compare that to an actively managed fund. It's not uncommon to see a turnover of 50% of a fund's assets with actively managed funds. Number 8 reason why I invest in index funds is my core wealth building tool. It minimizes risk. Let's compare it to investing in individual stocks. If you choose to invest in individual stocks, there's a risk of a company underperforming compared to the market, and at worst, going bankrupt. Thus, you lose a large portion of your money invested, or at worst, all of it. However, because index funds track many stocks, all stocks, if you go with the total market fund, you benefit from the positive effects of diversification. Many companies will underperform, and some will even go bankrupt. However, when you hold a broad market index fund that represents either the S&P 500 or the total market, the individual stock that drops in price will only be a small component of your overall portfolio. How about when we compare it to actively managed funds? With an actively managed fund, yes, you get better diversification than individual stocks, but there are other risks you have to deal with. 1, the risk of your manager being incompetent. 2, maybe not incompetent, but the risk of your fund manager making honest mistakes, and many of them. And 3, fund manager being competent and not making many mistakes, but the risk of your awesome fund manager retiring or moving to a different company. However, if your fund is following a simple index, there is no room for stupidity, honest mistakes, and retirement. A computer-generated program is doing most of the work of managing the fund because all it's doing is following an index. Number 9 reason why I invest in index fund is my core wealth building tool. It helps to minimize regret. Throughout history, there have been many times when different sectors of the market have performed better than others. There have been times when small cap companies have outperformed large cap companies. And there have been times when automobile companies have outperformed consumer goods companies. If we're trying to build our own portfolio, we would constantly be researching and trying to identify what the next hot group of companies would be. You would buy a group of automobile companies one year, then next year, focus your time on small up-and-coming rising companies with recent IPOs. If you're smart and also lucky, you could do fairly well. However, what you'll struggle with is constant regret because there will always be opportunities you're missing. You thought consumer good companies would do really well this year, but for some reason, it was the financial services companies that really knocked it out of the park. So how do you minimize regret? Just buy all of them through a simple, broad market index fund. Don't look for the needle in the haystack, just buy the haystack. The number 10 reason why I invest in index fund is my core wealth building tool. And this really is one of the most important reasons why you should invest in an index fund, especially if you're an average individual like myself. It works. You want to grow your wealth through the market? Index fund strategy works. There are many paths to a destination. From where I live in California, if I want to go to New York, there are a lot of different paths I can take. I can cut through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and make my way along the southern states. Or I can go up north, through San Francisco, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming, and work my way across the northern states. Or I can just forget driving and book a direct flight from LAX to JFK. Any of these options will take me from Orange County, California to New York City. The question is, what do I want to take based on the experience I want to have? In the same way, there are a lot of different pathways to wealth. You can manage rental properties. I know tons of people who've done really well through this route. You can open up coffee shops. I also know people who've done amazingly well through the small business route. Or you can choose the index fund route. And what I love about the index fund route is that while it may be slow and frankly boring, it works. If you invest a good portion of your income into a simple index fund for a long period of time, I'm confident you will amass a sizable amount of wealth by the time you're ready to retire. Thank you guys for watching. In the spirit of index funds, please check out what I consider the best index funds to invest here. Until next time, all the best.